Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. A'udzu billahi minasyaitonir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Innal hamdalillah nahmadu wa nasta'inu wa nastaghfiruh wa na'udzu billahi min syururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina. May yahdihillahu fala mudhillalah wa may yudlil fala hadiyalah. Wa asyhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la syarikalah wa asyhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, we praise Him, we seek His help, we seek His forgiveness, and we seek the protection of Allah from the evils in our hearts and from the evil things that we might be tempted to do. He whom Allah has guided, none of us can lead him astray. But he whom Allah has led astray, none of us can lead him back to the right path. I bear witness that none has the right to be worshipped except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He has no partners, and I bear witness that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is his slave and his messenger. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم وَمَا يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ فَقَدْ فَازَ فَوْزًا عَظِيمًا. O you truly believe, have taqwa to Allah as is His due, and do not die except in the state of Islam, which is a state of complete submission and surrender to Allah to subhanahu wa ta'ala. O man can have taqwa to Allah, who has created you from a single soul, that is Adam, peace be upon him, and from him Allah has created his wife. And from both of them, Allah has dispersed into many men and women. And have taqwa to Allah, in which by using His name, you have made many requests and demands from one another, and maintain the bonds of kinship. Indeed, Allah is ever over you an observer. O truly believe, have taqwa to Allah, and speak always the truth. If you do so, Allah will direct you to do good, righteous deeds, and He will forgive you of your sins. And whosoever obey Allah and His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he would have achieved a great achievement, that is being admitted into paradise. أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كلام الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. To proceed on, the best of the speech is the speech of Allah, which is in the Quran. The best guidance is the guidance of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The worst in Islam is the introductions of new elements in faith, and every newly invented matter is an innovation, and every innovation is a misguidance, and every misguidance will lead us to the hellfire. As-salatu wassalamu ala khatamil anbiya'il mursalin Muhammadin sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And greetings of peace goes to our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who is the last and final of all the prophets of Allah. Alhamdulillah, we are actually coming to the end of the second week of the month of Shawwal, isn't it true? The time is passing so fast, brothers and sisters in Islam, that for those of you who have not started even to fast the month of Shawwal, the 6 days in which the reward is so tremendous, the reward of fasting the whole year, you should start to do it, because as you know, the first of all, your momentum of Ramadan might be waning or might be getting worse in terms of the habits of fasting, right? So it will make your fasting more difficult in the month of Shawwal. And of course, secondly, the timing of the fasting is actually longer now. If I can remember, I think this morning Fajr is about 2:46, if I'm not mistaken, in the morning. Maghrib is about 9:15 yesterday, or 9:16, something like that, right? So it is more than 18 hours, subhanAllah. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for you and I to fast in this month of Shawwal and accept our deeds, right? So this month, two things that we should do. First of all, inshallah, try to fast the 6 days of Shawwal, and secondly, continue to ask Allah to accept our deeds in the month of Ramadan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept everything that we do and forgive us for any shortcomings in the things that we did in the month of Ramadan. Now, today is another interesting topic. I seldom do biographies or the seerah of Sahaba, because sometimes when you read it in books, for me personally, I'm a reader, so I love to read, right? But this is something in which we need to do things like this more often, inshallah, because I think, as I said before in the first lecture about Khadijah radhiyallahu anha, is about the lack of role model, especially for the females, right? And there is this misconception in the communities, whether it's your community or my community, in our cultures and race and all this, that perhaps the best role of the woman should be locked up at home. Isn't it true, right? That, well, there's no need to, yes, there's no need to seek knowledge from for the women or for the girls, because, well, they should have sought knowledge from the husband, and that's completely is wrong, right? Because it's quite important for girls, right? For the women to seek knowledge, because who's going to educate your children, right? When husbands are busy working, right, and you are alone with your newborn child, and the child gets older and older. I mean, if the woman or the mother is not equipped in terms of Islamic knowledge, how is she going to educate the children? And that's quite important to understand this. Well, the husband may not be free or may not be Islamically aware himself anyway, right? So it is important for me personally, especially after, inshallah, after you listen to this story today, regarding a woman, right? For Aishah binti Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, radiallahu anha, but how she acquired knowledge herself, subhanallah, from her husband, yeah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where how she herself, right, she is only a virgin wife of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? How a lot of things were revealed about her in the Quran. How also, well, at this moment, I hate to say this, a lot of people, especially from the Shia side, for whatever reasons, the distortions of her stories, they hated her, right? I mean, Allah guide these people, right? Because we are talking about your mother and my mother, yeah, Ummul Mu'minin, the mother of the believers, and something in which you and I, we have to understand her story, and we also need to remove the prejudice. I mean, it's always the same story, isn't it true, right? Oh no, she married Muhammad, married her when, she's just a child. Subhanallah, right? All these insults against our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and her, of course, right? So all these things, inshallah, we're going to cover this story today, right? So this is something in which, as I said before, right, we are trying to, every week we're going to search for new role models, yeah, for you sisters, yeah, for the brothers who have wives, and for those who have future wives, and for those who have aunties and mothers and all this, right? We need something positive like this, inshallah, right, in order to understand how we should emulate these role models, right? Um, as it is, right? With the social media, with all these influences on this, as what we discussed last week, right? All the things that they care about is about the dunya, and about how to lead a beautiful life in this world, and how to make more money, how to make yourself more beautiful, how to be rich, and all these kind of things, right? But we have this wonderful, subhanallah, role model, in which we have to try and understand her life, and hopefully try to emulate, right? How she lives, and of course, there's a romance between Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Aisha radhiallahu anha, in which it is. I mean, as sometimes we can see couples nowadays, right? It's so rigid, right? There's completely no romance in the marriage, right? It's all about, well, halal, haram, and all this. But subhanallah, in this story, we see a lot of things that happening in Aisha anha's life, and only that, we will also see the human side of her, how women tend to be jealous, how she reacted, and of course how Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam reacted to her jealousy. And it's quite interesting how Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself was also patient, right? So to summarize the general background, yeah, as I said just now, her full name is Abdullah Aishah binti Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, right? Father was Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, anhu, as you know, the best friend of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and was the first caliph, right? Mother was Ruman bint Amir al-Kinaniyah, radiallahu anha, right? The marriage of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? We know that the marriage took place slightly before Hijrah, right? And it was, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the second marriage after Khadijah radhiyallahu anha passed away, right? Second marriage, okay? And she has no children. There's always a lessons to be learned, isn't it true, right? Of course, women will always have to have children, but there's always this wisdom from Allah, right? That she played an important role in um, teaching, right? Even the Sahaba, right? And many of them would come to her as the one of the greatest scholars, yeah, in her time, right? And subhanallah, she's one of the few people who were born in Islam, right? Surrounded by beautiful people who accepted Islam. Not only that, they were one of the Abu Bakr, subhanallah, anhu, right? He was one of the top, if not the top, Muslims in those times, and even until today, right? And she stated herself, right? I do not recollect to have any memories of my parents except being upon Islam. Quite rare in those days, right? That a person was born as a Muslim, right? And she was a sister to another courageous lady, right? Of course, she is the Asma anha. She was another daughter of Abu Bakr anhu, she was one who kept a secret of the migration of Prophet Muhammad and Abu Bakr anhu, right, from Mecca to Medina, and she was among the sister was among the, who accepted Islam first, right? So this is a bit of background. Her death came, I think, when it was I think about 57 or 58 years after Hijrah, right? And we know it was reported Abu Hurairah who was the one who prayed the janazah prayer upon her, right? Now, so this is just a summary about her wonderful and colorful life story, right? Who was she before marriage? Aishah anha was born in Mecca about 613 or 614 AD or CE, right? She had lots of, and she was a lot of significant qualities. And you have to remember, she was the daughter of Abu Bakr anhu. So definitely, right? How intelligent she was, how at such a young age she was able to be exposed to Islam in such a wonderful, wonderful manner, right? And her knowledge itself as a young person, we have to remember that Prophet Muhammad died when she was only 18. Perhaps it's Allah's wisdom how she lived until quite some time, about at least 48 years, if not mistaken, after Muhammad passed away, right? So these 48 years of immense knowledge passed to the Sahaba, right? Because as a person who's a wife of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, she has a lot of exposure to him, yeah, a lot of knowledge, and she herself was a wonderful student, right? A lot of interactions between student and teacher and all this, right? So she was, as I said, educated very early, right, through her father, right? And she was raised, as I said, as a Muslim in a Muslim environment, right? And she has the strength and characteristic similar to her father in terms of leadership and in terms of the enthusiasm to seek knowledge, right? So she was actually given on a plate to Prophet Muhammad as a person who is able, right, to provide in terms of knowledge, yeah, to the Muslim Ummah in the early days of Islam, right? So let's now talk about her marriage, right? Of course, right, we have to discuss this, right? In the days of Saudi Arabia, right, it is the culture in those days, well, to book the marriage early, right? So in the sense that Abu Bakr anhu himself, right, she was one who presented Aishah anha to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? When she was about 6 years old, right? But the marriage did not take place then, and definitely consummation of the marriage did not take place then, right? But in those days in Saudi Arabia, the people would reach a puberty quite early. Perhaps it's because of the climate and all this, right? And it was the culture then. It is not. So in the sense that there was I remember reading something like a grandmother at the age of 20 plus. Grandmother, subhanallah, because it was in those ages quite common, right? Because if you want to penalize both of them, right, in terms of the marriage, then the enemies of Islam would have immediately point to this direction, isn't it true? Right? How dare he marry such a young girl? But there was never an issue in those days, right? And we shouldn't make it an issue. Not I mean, for example, in the kingdom of United Kingdom anyway, in England and Scotland, all this, they used to chop each other's head, isn't it true? Right? Does that reflect about how they are now? Of course not. It's different. It's different cultures and different way of perceiving things, right? So this is something in which um, we need to understand, right, that many hadith narrated that when she was at the age of 6, right, her mother came to her while she was playing outside. So when she was playing outside, her mother came to her. Her mother took her into the home where her father, who was a lifelong best friend of Prophet ﷺ, right, was sitting with him, and the offer of marriage was being discussed. It was just being discussed, and then she went back outside, right? Now, so clearly, so this is like, okay, this is being booked, so nobody else can marry her. And this is like an engagement, isn't it true? Right? Even though it was such a young age, that was the culture then. So nothing should be said against them, how the Prophet Muhammad SAW married a girl at such a young age. Right? Now, and this is an important hadith from Bukhari. Yeah, Prophet Muhammad SAW himself, right, said, narrated by Aishah anha, Prophet Muhammad SAW said to her, "You have been shown to me twice in my dream." So Prophet SAW had a dream of Aishah twice. I saw you pictured on a piece of silk, and someone said to me, "This is your wife." When I uncovered the picture, I saw that it was you, and I said, "If this is from Allah, it will be done." As you know, the prophets, when they have a dream, right, it would be a revelation, and that means they would carry this out with Allah's will, of course, right? We know that Ibrahim alayhi salam had a dream that he need to slaughter the son Ismail, and he need to do it, right? So this was when Muhammad himself saw in the dream of Aisha twice, anha, right? So again, this is part of Allah's plan, right? And how she's supposed to marry Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? So in the early years of marriage, as you know, a 9-year-old, yes, she reached puberty and all this, right? But it's not just about fulfilling the duties of a wife. There was a smooth and slow transition of how she carried out her duty as a wife, right? She was being looked after by the Prophet ﷺ, first wife after Khadijah anha, right, called Sauda. Sauda was used to marry to this Sahaba called, I think, Sakran anhum, in which who died because they were they did the migration to Abyssinia, right? The first migration, and then on the way back he passed away, right? And Prophet Muhammad married her. So this is the first marriage to Sauda anha. Again, another Ummul Mu'minin, our mother. So Aisha is the second one. So she was being nurtured by Sauda, right? Obviously, the age difference between Sauda and Aisha anha. So it makes Sauda more motherly, yeah, to the Aisha anha, right? So this is important because rather than throw all the responsibilities to a young girl, there was a lot of mercy and kindness of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? So that she can adjust to this new life as a mother, right? So Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself taught a lot of things in terms of wisdom, manners, etiquette, public dealings, economic and domestic laws, and ways of living in a very light and natural way. There's no forcing of her to accept the duty as a housewife and all this, right? So there was a huge, in fact, she herself, and her, she was the one who really loves Prophet Muhammad very much. Yeah. So you and I know about this saying of Prophet Muhammad about Aisha anha, right? The excellence of Aishah over other women is like the excellence of tharid. That means tharid is a type of amazing food, right? Over other types of food. So he himself, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, understood, right, or loved Aisha anha, and understood the importance that she would play in the life and even after he passed away, right? So the marriage of the couple, right? We have to understand this marriage, how much romance there were involved in that. So, for example, there were many documented accounts, right, of how Muhammad used the plate and the cups, right, of Aisha anha, and so after she used it, he just used it and he ate from the same cups and the same plates. There's nothing wrong with that. Hadith from Sahih Muslim. There's no discomfort in all this. And he also eat, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he eat from the meat that has been beaten by Aisha anha. So subhanallah, so it is something in which, again, it's normal and natural for husband and wife, right? So in this hadith from Muslim, yeah, Aisha anha stated, I used to drink from the same glass even when on menstruation. And the Prophet Muhammad take the glass and put his mouth in the same spot where I put my mouth, and then he drank. Right? So it is a simple romance, simple marriage, full of love. Right? And you know the famous story of how Prophet Muhammad raced with her. The first time they raced, she won, right? And the second time they raced, he won, and he said, "Oh, this is a tit for tat," right? And so much activity between both of them. Okay, and there was an incident in which she would sometimes hid behind Prophet Muhammad because she was so fearful of her own father, right? Father was very strict, as many fathers were, right? She would hid behind Prophet Muhammad in order to shield herself from the father, because the father was trying to ensure that was a good wife and all this. Okay, so it was a very, very loving relationship, right? And she would always be very cautious, as any one of us should, right? Or any one of the wives should, right? About people who would enter her house. You have to remember, Prophet is a prominent figure, right? In those early days, right? She would be very cautious of those who would enter the house in his absence. Okay. There were incidents also, right, in terms of during the Eid, right? When one of the Eid, the girls were singing songs, right? Abu Bakr was quickly scolding the girls, right? And Muhammad was saying, this is an Eid, leave them alone, let them enjoy themselves, right? So they stayed with Prophet, Aisha anha stayed with Muhammad to listen to the songs, right? And after that, they went to another place, right? There was a display of like a spear competition, something like that, right? She stayed there and she watched both of them holding hands and all this. And so this is the thing in which they're very romantic, right? And this should be emulated by us who are married, right? Those who are married, and you should know that, as I've always advised, when I gave when I gave a marriage sermon to this married couple, right? The romance shouldn't just end there. It needs to be continue after marriage, because it is quite difficult, right? A lot of couples would face many challenges in the marriage, right? So you need to keep this romance alive. Typical, we can see from this example, subhanallah, of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu, right? How they were so intimately close together and all this, right? They drinking from each other's cups and all this. Okay. So it's not just about, okay, I'm married to you, you're married to me, that's it, right? You are wearing clothes for 1 week in the house, you don't change the clothes, and it's that you need to spark the romance in the marriage in order to make it work, right? So sisters and brothers, this is an important lesson, right? Of course, we also see the human side of Aisha anha. After all, she's a woman, right? Any woman in general would be quite jealous of the husband, right? She is very, very much jealous of Khadijah radhiyallahu anha, even though they have never met each other, right? So every time he would mention about her, and there was on one occasion in which she said, yeah, Aishah radhiyallahu anha said, right? Well, isn't it? Didn't Allah give you something better than her? That means, well, she passed away, right? I'm here now. What more do you want? Why are you talking about her? Didn't Allah replace her, Khadijah anha, with somebody better, which is me? That's what she implied. Of course, Prophet was very upset. And he said, right, and we discussed before last week, right? He said, Khadijah believed in me when nobody did. It's true, right? As one who is so close to the husband, right? We discussed last week how at the time of the first revelation, she was the one who covered him up with a blanket and all this, right? The second revelation came and he became the prophet. He was announced by in Surah Muddathir, right? Surah 74, to pronounce or to glorify Allah, right? And all this. And she immediately say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu rasuluh, without any hesitation. And I believe so, that she's the first one to accept Islam, obviously because she knew she was at the spot when nobody else were there, right? Of the revelations and all this, right? She even accompanied him, remember, into the for a few days during the meditation. She brought food and all this, but not, as I said last week, not accompanying and talking to him. No, of course not. She just left him alone to meditate, and she knew her role as a wife, right? And that's why Muhammad was very defensive when Aisha anha was quite jealous about her, right? And he said, Khadijah believed in me when nobody else did. And Khadijah was the one who assisted me with her wealth, which is true, right? She was very rich, Khadijah anha. And she used all the money to support, to free the slave, we discussed last week, to free the slave and to feed the poor and all this, until eventually, even when it was in a boycott season, she completely have no money and no food and all this, together with the rest of the family of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? And she is the one to whom Allah blessed me with children, right? We knew that, except for Maria the Copt, who bore, I think, one child called Ibrahim, who died very young, right? She was the one who bore her actually about 6 or 7 children, right? The boys all passed away at the early age, at infancy, and they had 4 girls, right? We discussed last week. And from then on, Aisha anha was realized the position and was very quiet, right? So this is something in which, even though we have so much respect, of course, for Aisha anha, but we have to realize she's still a human being. She has feelings. She will be jealous, and she did all these things, right? As a human being, there's nothing wrong with that, right? She's not an angel, right? She still make all these mistakes of being jealous and all this. There was even one incident in which the guest came to the house, her house, right, of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then another wife sent into the house some food. I mean, as friendly as gesture. I mean, there's always this competition against the wives, isn't it true? Send some food in the house to feed the guests. And then she was so upset, right? She was very angry because she was saying something that, this is a house. She knew she would know how to entertain the guests. She threw the plate on the ground and it smashed. Now, brothers, right? If you are in the position of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you have a guest there, right? You are the husband, right? I can guarantee you, right? There would be World War III in the house, isn't it true, right? That you will be very upset. How can the wife do this? The plate all over the ground, the food and all this, right? What did Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam did, right? She just smiled. Sorry, he just smiled, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? Because he's so full of mercy, right? And he simply laughed, and he told the companions who were in the house, your mother is very angry. Sorry, your mother is very jealous. And that's it. And leave it as it is, right? And that's us have to pick up the things and clean it and all this. But I think if you and I were in that situation, is a different story, isn't it true? Right? We would definitely teach our wife a lesson for being so disrespectful and all this, right? But look at how they treat each other, right? How much love they had for each other. Well, she simply dismissed it that, well, telling the companions that, well, your mother is jealous because, uh, to the companions, right? She is a mother of the believer, right? And so this is something in which is very respectful. They will respect her a lot, even though she may be younger than most of them. Okay. Now, another thing about Aisha Anha is how she used to question a lot. So it's not about, okay, just have all this information from Prophet Muhammad and that's it, right? She would question and question a lot in order for her, and that's her nature, in order for her to get more knowledge. So one of the famous questions, as you know, was about the day of judgment, wasn't it true, right? In which Prophet Muhammad was saying, well, all of us, the people will be raised uncircumcised, naked, right? Immediately, Aisha Anha asked, well, which is quite logical, right? Naked, aren't we going to look at each other's private parts, right? And this is what Aisha Anha asked, right? Which is quite natural, of course. When you are naked, aren't you going to, look at up and down this? And subhanallah, but Prophet answered was even more, for me, one is an epitome of how the day of judgment is going to be, right? He said, right, in the translation about the day of judgment, no, Aisha, right, that the affair will be so severe on the people, right? People will be so scared of Allah that they won't even think of looking at each other. So the question is very amazing question, which is very logical, right? Naked, right? You have to remember also in Saudi Arabia, right, in those days, right, especially in the Muslim community, very very modestly dressed and all this, yeah. And now it's different, of course, right? If you think about naked, well, you have seen half naked people in Hyde Park and all this sun tanning in the summer, right? For us here in the UK, but in those days it's quite different, right? Um, so the way she asks is very logical, and the way Muhammad answers is even more scary, right? There's no time, there's no desire to look at each other's private parts, even though every one of us will be resurrected naked, because the matter is so severe. The day of judgment will be so scary, so frightening, right? And we'll be so fearful, brothers, sisters, of our deeds that we may have missed out, or the lack of deeds which we have done in order to present to Allah, that this nakedness of people standing beside you and me is nothing, right? We are more scared of our outcome after we face Allah, and everybody would know, right? Everybody would know when we are everybody resurrected naked, uncircumcised, right? That's it. Game over, in a sense that whatever that has been done, right? We should have done it earlier when we are still alive, not when we are presented, resurrected, naked, and uncircumcised. Okay, so um, so this is something in which Aisha Anha, she has this very inquisitive mind and asks a lot of questions. And you have to understand, right? She did not go to any madrasa. She did not go to any school. Her teacher was always at home with her, right, teaching her. Yeah. So from the age of about 9 to 18, as I said, and I think it was 18 or 20 when Prophet Muhammad passed away, right? She was constantly at the company of Prophet Muhammad, right? So therefore she had this huge ocean of knowledge to share with you and I today, right? And the best thing, of course, some of the revelations we talked before, right? I'm going to talk maybe a little bit later, how some of the revelations were revealed because of her. Okay, so this knowledge that she has, right? When Prophet ﷺ passed away, yeah, a lot of companions would come to her, right? You have to remember in those days, especially, everyone was wearing niqab, the woman, right? So there would be this proper seeking of knowledge, yeah, from with Aishah anha as a teacher, right behind this barrier and all this knowledge, and they still come to her for rulings and all this. Um, Alhamdulillah, we have also her, I think, was it her nephew, right? The nephew's name was Urwah bin Zubair, who was the son of Anhu, who was the son of her sister Asma anha, who married to, I think, Zubair bin Awam anhu, right? So the good thing about a nephew who was seeking knowledge with her was that, she doesn't need to wear niqab. They talk freely. They can, become more. It's easy to teach without all this niqab and all this, and therefore they were more personal, and he was one of the best students ever. Okay, this the nephew called Urwah bin Zubair anhu. Okay, so he said, he said, right. I have never seen anyone with more knowledge in hadith, in tafsir, in fiqh, in Arabic, in poetry, or even medicine than Aishah anha. And this how he revealed about the knowledge of Aishah anha. So in the sense that she became such a prominent scholar, right, on the basis of her relationship as a wife of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? And she was also the advisor to the Khilafah, the Caliph, right? For the first 4 months, especially, right before her death. Okay, so this is quite important information that you and I must know about how Aisha anha, despite the fact that she didn't go to school, didn't go to madrasa, but she didn't need to go there, because she had the best teacher at home whom she can always ask questions and all this, right? And on the basis of this, as I said, I think about 48 years of her life after the death of Muhammad, she was able to impart knowledge to everybody, and alhamdulillah, we benefit from that. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, she narrated hadith for about, I think, about 2,200 and 2,200 something hadith, right? One of the most people who narrated hadith of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, so let's now talk about the knowledge, right? Imam Zahabi rahimullah said, I do not know of any woman in the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam or before more knowledgeable than her. Yeah. So many reports state how the senior companions would refer to her and ask her issues. So the senior companions, right, would come to her and ask her questions about different issues, right? Imam Zuhair rahimullah said that if the knowledge of Aisha was to put together with knowledge of all women, Aisha's knowledge would be superior, right? You have to remember this, and we discussed before, right? And again, this is the wisdom of Allah, right? How she married at a young age, right? And it was only when Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, our beloved prophet, passed away, she was only 18. And yet, this about 10 years of knowledge is sufficient, with Allah's will, of course, with Allah's help and assistance and guidance, make her one of the best scholars in her time. And of course, perhaps today, right? And this is important on the basis also, as I said, about how the teacher-student relationship between Prophet and Aishah and herself, and how she was continuously very inquisitive, very enthusiastic, and never afraid to ask questions, right? Now, and of course, and as I said just now, right at the beginning stage, she was the daughter of Abu Bakr or the Anhu, who was, if not the greatest, one of the greatest, is the greatest Sahaba. Amazing education from him, I'm sure, right? Until 9, and then transferred to Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, again, the best person ever on the earth. So it's not a coincidence that she lived up to the expectations as we expect her to be, right? Daughter of the greatest, what they call the greatest Sahaba, and then wife to the greatest man on earth. Subhanallah. Okay. Um. So the questions that she asked, for example, right? Oh, Allah's apostle, right? If I have two neighbors, right? Which neighbor should be close to me, right? So that I would be able to give presents. Okay. So I have this neighbor right and left, for example, right? If I have only one present, who should I give this present to, right? So the answer was, Prophet said, the one whom the door is closest to you. So this is a Romanian neighbor. This is a Muslim neighbor, right? Actually, our door is quite close to the door. It's just next to each other, right? This is this window here. The door of my neighbor of Bangladesh is quite far the other side, right? So I'm actually supposed to give presents to the Romanian person. Subhanallah, right? So this is how um, she even desired to learn. I mean, to you and me may not be important, isn't it true? But to her, every single detail is important, right? So that she can understand the rights of the neighbors. Okay, and as I said before, um, she did transmit about 2,210 hadiths, if I'm not mistaken, right? And these are the treasure for you and I, isn't it true, right? On many occasions, you will see Aishah narrated this, Aishah narrated that, and all this, yeah, from the hadith sources, right? So she served the Muslim for about 44 years after the Prophet Prophet's death, right? And um, Imam Zuhri, a leading jurist, says Aisha anha was the most learned person among the people. Senior and learned companions used to consult her. So the most learned and the senior and learned companions used to consult her also, because subhanallah, right? She has all this uh, very amazing knowledge that they might not have, on the basis that she was really spending a lot of time with Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Okay, and so, brothers and sisters, and this from this we should learn, right? We should understand the message or the lessons that need to be learned, right? For example, it's okay to have a daughter, isn't it true? Right? Because some people, especially in the early days of the Jahiliyyah days, right? They hate daughters and they hate girls and all this because they think it's such it will ruin the reputation of the family. That's why in those early days of Jahiliyyah, they would kill some of the daughters, isn't it true? Right? But from here, we can understand, right? Firstly, that girls should seek knowledge, and this is absolutely important. That's why, as I said before last time, right? I mean, many lectures before, it is unheard of in my side of the world, right? That you don't have a female facilities in the mosque. It's ridiculous, right? In Indonesia, Malaysia, a lot of women will go to the mosque to seek knowledge, and that is absolutely mandatory to seek knowledge for the woman. How are they going to educate the children? Because they will be the one who's so intimate with the children, isn't it true? Right? To their own children, while the husband perhaps is quite busy um, um, working and seeking Allah's provisions. And this is something in which you and I, we need to resolve this, right? The fact that, I mean, in some cultures, right, it's unheard of that women go to the mosque. For whatever reasons, I do not know, right? We need to resolve this, right? We need to have this understanding from the story of Aisha anha, that she herself, she has a lot of knowledge because, right, she asks questions, right? And it is her right to have knowledge, right? So you don't deprive women of seeking knowledge, when it is actually the right of women to have this knowledge. Okay, and it is not right every time, yeah, to say that, oh, a woman must always be at home. I mean, that is not correct, right? They have the right to seek knowledge. They have the right to, to be with a certain limit, of course, limitations from the Sharia, right? That they have the right to do whatever they want in terms of building up their knowledge and the skills, so that they're able to impart the knowledge to the children. Okay. Now, she also had this amazing photographic memory. There was one incident in which I think the father, Abu Bakr anhu, and two companions, may Allah be pleased with all of them, right? They were very sick, right? They were very ill, and she went to the house and she asked them questions about the illness and what happened and all this. Her father was saying something from the verses of the Quran, right? And these two companions were saying something about poetry and all this. Quite a long um, things to remember, right? And she relayed all this to Prophet ﷺ word by word. Everything that the father said, the two companions said, she relayed to the Muhammad ﷺ word by word in a perfect manner. So she had this photographic memory, which is, of course, as you know, subhanallah, may Allah reward. And some of you, like Brother Ibrahim, right? Brother Ibrahim, you have, of course, alhamdulillah, may Allah grant you patience, because you do have autism, right? But you have all these memories. You remember everything about the other countries, about the politics, about subhanallah, right? So Allah compensate you with other things, isn't it true, right? So same thing as her, right? She has all these memories stuck inside her, and that is good for her to deliver all this knowledge, yeah, to the other companions. Okay, now what are the difficulties that Aishah encountered in her life, right? Um, so, for example, right? And the life of Prophet Muhammad, right? Even though he has the ability, he's the one who is a leader of the Mu'minin, right? He would get all the money and all the wealth, but subhanallah, nothing ever stayed in the house, right? So quite a lot of time she and the household of Prophet ﷺ, they were hungry together. Even though they were given wealth, they were given some food and all this, but everything they quickly give out to the rest. Okay? So there was one incident in which Prophet Muhammad ﷺ stayed away from his wives because, well, as I said, even our mothers, right, mother of the believers, right, they're also humans, right? There was an incident after the battle of the Khaybar expedition, in which the Muslims acquired a lot of wealth, right? So they started to ask Prophet Muhammad ﷺ for this, even though the wealth was actually distributed already, right? They asked for many things that it stressed the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, right? But she stayed away from the wives because they keep on asking him for this. I mean, even though they are our mothers, yeah, they're still humans, right? Who needs all these jewelries, perhaps, and all this. Yeah. So when Muhammad ﷺ returned to the house of Aishah anha, right, she was of course very delighted to see him, but she did say this because Allah revealed a verse, right? And he said, do not make a hasty decision. So that means, yes, I'm here, right? But I don't have to be your husband, and you don't have to be my wife, right? You have the option, right, to consult your parents what you want to do with this whole relationship, right, in a very nice manner, right? Because Allah revealed in Surah Al-Ahzab 33, in verse number 28 to 29, in the meaning, O Prophet, say to your wives, if you desire the life of this world, 33, verse number 28 to 29, in the meaning, if you desire the life of this world and its adornments. Yeah, talking about the wife, right? Then come, and I will make you content, and I will release you with a fair release. So Allah is telling the Prophet ﷺ, tell your wife, right? If they want the dunya, come, right? I will release you. But if you desire Allah and His Messenger and the abode of the next world, then truly Allah has prepared an immense reward for those of you who do good. Right? So on the basis of this verse, right, Muhammad ﷺ said, well, consult your parents. What do you want to do with our marriage? Right? You want to break up or you still want to remain with me? Aishah anha replied immediately, right? Why do I need to consult my parents? Right? Indeed, I desire Allah and His Messenger and the abode of the next world. Right? Indeed, I desire Allah and the Messenger and the abode of the hereafter. Right? And the other wives also say the same thing. Okay? So these are some of the things that happen, right? And she also, Aishah anha, participated in all the battles. Not as in the fighting, of course, right? But she helped. You have to remember, she was very, very young, right? I think in her teens. And she still helped them in terms of giving the soldiers water and tending to the wounded soldiers, right? And may Allah reward her for all this. And that is why indeed one of the meanings of her name Aishah is life, right? She was the one who helped to mend or to tend to the wounded soldiers. Okay, now her generosity itself, right? Again, you have to remember her status, right? She will be given this, right? So, for example, in one day she was given a gift, being the wife of Prophet Muhammad, right? 100,000 dirhams, which is a lot of money. And brothers and sisters, if you were given this amount of money, for example, 100,000 pounds or 10,000 pounds, right? For sure, right? Let's go to Westfield, right? Let's go to buy some things for myself first, right? And go to, right? Go shopping, right? Summer sale, or go for holidays, right? Forget about this COVID-19 first, right? I'm talking about if there's no COVID-19, yeah, you go for holidays with this money, then give the money to the poor. Isn't it true? But not her, right? 100,000 dirhams, right? Is it 100,000? Yes, 100,000 dirhams, right? Immediately, she distributed to the poor and the needy. Immediately. No question, no thinking that maybe I should keep it to myself. Nothing at all, right? So much so that she had no provision at all in the house. Subhanallah. No provision in the house. Shortly after that, the maid servant asked, she had a maid, asked her, couldn't you have brought a dirham's worth of meat with which to break your fast? Couldn't you have at least buy have a small meat so they can break your fast with it? And she said, if I had thought of it, I would have done so. So that shows a sincerity that she immediately want to help this poor person, that poor person, that family, this family, until everything is finished. Never think about herself. And this is an important character to emulate, isn't it, true, brothers and sisters in Islam? Not saying that we will reach the same level, of course, right? But she has so much sincerity and generosity. She was also called this al-Tib, which means mother of fragrance. Why was she named mother of fragrance? Is because every time when she gave this note of money to the poor, before she gave, she would put fragrance on the money. Subhanallah, right? She would perfume, on the money. When asked to explain why, she explained that the charity would reach Allah before it reached the beggar's hands, and she would want the charity given to Allah in a fragrant condition. Isn't it amazing? That's why she's called the mother of fragrance, or al-Tib, because every time before she gave, right, the money, she would put perfumes on it. Come on, right? For us, people come in the tube sometimes, and we want to give money. We just do like that, isn't it true? We can't even be bothered, right? And we need to learn from this, right? And she did say, right? She knew that before all this reached the poor, it will reach all of us, and she wanted to reach Allah in a very amazing state of fragrance of the money. Okay. Um. So in another important report, and you may have heard this, right? She, as we talked just now, she sometimes had nothing at all, right, to give. So there was a knock on the door. She only had one grape. One grape. Now you and I would say, sorry, I have nothing left. Isn't it true? Honestly, right? Because that grape is supposed to be for me, because I'm fasting, I need to break the fast with this. Isn't it true? Right? But she did not. Right? She did not say that. She gave the grape to the person. You know why? Right? Because of the verse in the Quran, in Surah number 99, Zalzalah, was the second to last two verses. فَمَا يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ خَيْرًا يَرَهُ وَمَا يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ شَرًّا يَرَهُ. Whoever does an atom weight of good deeds shall see it on the day of judgment. Whoever does an atom uh, worth of evil deeds shall see it on the day of judgment. So she was counting, well, an atom is so small, isn't it true? The grape, in one grape, how many atoms do they have? So she make these calculations and all this of rewards, knowing that she already has so much knowledge. She's the wife of Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. She imparted knowledge to the poor, and she still wanted to get these rewards. Subhanallah. How amazing our mother was. And inshallah, we should try to emulate the generosity that she has. And alhamdulillah, I mean, I know some sisters, and I mean, Allah reward you, right? Um, when you came, and you give me, and I know you do not have much money, and yet you gave some money to the poor in Indonesia, because on the basis that this year you may not be able to go to Hajj because, well, the pilgrimage may be closed. You use some of this money to help the poor. I mean, Allah reward you for all this. Because, well, if I can't go this year, then I can go next year, inshallah. Next year I can collect more money with Allah's will. And this is the type of things that we need to follow, right? About generosity and helping the poor. Okay. Now, so this is something in which we have to try and emulate. You talk about role model, this is a role model, inshallah, isn't it true? Right? And she's also so defensive of Prophet Muhammad. Remember, there was one incident in which Prophet Muhammad was greeted by a Jewish person, Assalamu alaikum, right? Which means death be upon you. Aishah was quite upset, anha, right? But Muhammad was not upset, right? He just said, well, wa alaikum, same goes to you, right? So she said that, well, don't you know that he was wishing you death? Muhammad said, yes, I know. That's why I said, wa alaikum, same goes to you, right? So, but she was very defensive of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, right? In all matters, right? And in the last days of Prophet Muhammad's life, as you know, right, he chose to leave this world in the arms of Aishah anha, right? She chose to stay with her, and all the other wives agreed, right? Now, don't make mistake that when Muhammad choose wives, this is favorite. Of course, I mean, in terms of feelings and all this, all of us has feelings, right? But he did not show the actions of favoritism, right? That she prefers this wife or another wife. No, of course not, right? But you just have these feelings in your heart, and that's what Muhammad did. He had this favorite or love so much of Aisha anha that he wanted to spend the last days with her, right? And she chewed this siwak, right? because Muhammad SAW said wanted to clean the mouth right before he faced Allah, and the siwak was softened by the saliva of Aishah and Anha, right? And in the last moments of his life, right, his head was on Aishah and Anha's lap, and he remained with Prophet ﷺ for I think 9 or 10 years, yeah, before his death. Yeah, and as I said just now, when he died, Prophet ﷺ died, she was only 18 years old, right? So you can say, right, it is a love story, right? Alhamdulillah, but it's not just a love story with no lessons learned, isn't it true? A lot of lessons learned, right? And we're going to talk later about some of the um, challenges that she faced. Yeah. Um, so we understood also, for example, in her life, right? Because of her, the verses on tayammum was revealed. I think in Surah number 5, in verse number 6, right? It was because yes, because also qadar of Allah, of course, right? She lost a necklace, and she was looking for the necklace, and she couldn't find the necklace. And of course, some of the people were quite unhappy with her because everybody had to stay because they were they were traveling together. So she um, eventually found the necklace, but before that, they were late for the prayers. So the verse in Surah number 5, verse number 6 was revealed, and to our advantage, of course. So for those who wish to pray but there's no water, which is tayammum, right? Where was the necklace in the end? Well, it was, I think that the camel sat on it, right? And of course, it's on the decree of Allah, right? But on that basis, right? This is one of the blessings that we have through her, yeah, Aisha anha, because of the ease of you and I on the tayammum. Yeah, that if there's no water, we are able still to pray, yeah, by using this dust or the sand. Okay. Now there was also a great slander, right? Slander against her, as you know. I'm going to talk about it in a short while, right? How she was accused of having this affair with one of the Sahaba, right? On the basis of her that she overslept. I'm going to talk about it later, inshallah. Right? So all these stories and the Quran, I think in Surah An-Nur, quite a lot of verses were revealed about this slander. Yeah, in Surah An-Nur, I think about 20 verses were revealed in Surah An-Nur, talking about the slander, teaching you and I to actually, when you know that this is a believer, then you need to defend her instead of just keeping quiet. Okay? And she was buried, right? She died in Medina in a home on 17th of Ramadan, 58 year after Hijrah, and she was buried in in the Bakr grave, right? And even Muhammad SAW said, right, before he passed away, yeah, learn a portion of your religion from this Humaira. Humaira means red colored lady, right? So learn your religion from this Humaira, and this is the term referred to Aisha anha, right? So in the last days of her life, and this is very interesting, very, very poignant, right? She was visited by Ibn Abbas, right? And you're talking about our mother, right, who did so much, right, for Islam, right? Some verses reveal about her. Even she said, I'm afraid of Allah. I'm afraid to meet Allah. And subhanAllah, brothers and sisters, shouldn't we feel the same? And we are such a different level from her. She said, I'm afraid to meet Allah, right? But Ibn Abbas was trying to comfort her, right? Glad tidings to you. And she replied, why? Right? Because there's nothing between you and meeting Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and your loved one except the leaving of your soul from your body. You are the most beloved of women to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the messenger only loved the the messenger only loved that which is pure, right? And your necklace fell, because what necklace fell, right? On the night of Abawa, then the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam stopped and he remained in the place, and the people stopped too, right? And the verses of Tayammum was revealed. Okay, and Allah revealed your innocence, right? Innocence, innocence because of the slander against her in Surah An-Nur, right? And the noble angels brought it, and there is not a masjid from the masjids of Allah except that these verses are recited in it day and night. So you would have thought, right? Because as first she said, I'm so afraid with Allah, right? Ibn Abbas was trying to comfort her. You would have thought that, right? All these reminders of how she is, how she was, right? She was the beloved of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She would comfort her. What did she say, right? Please leave me, right? So, Ibn Abbas, right? So please leave me, O Ibn Abbas, by the one in whose hands is my soul. I wish I was gone and forgotten. So she was quoting the verses of Maryam. Was it Maryam? Yeah, rather, no, Maryam alayhi salam, right? About how when she said the same thing, right? That I wish I had died before this, or I was known when she was uh, pregnant with Isa alayhi salam. Wasn't it true, right? That we know, and she knew, right, that she is going to deliver someone special, right? But she still, still didn't go to her head that she would be so big-headed. She just wanted to get it done and over with. And this was how Aishah anha felt, right? That even Ibn Abbas was trying to praise her, trying to remind her about the goodness, and she said, "Go away," right? And this is something in New Age, right? And she wished that she was gone, right, and forgotten. And this shows a humility upon the um, even though it is a truth, she was still very humble, right? And she wasn't. It didn't go to her head that she's such a wonderful woman in the eyes of Allah, and of course in the eyes of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? The lesson to be learned from this, the last part of a death before death, is that, well, Ibn Abbas, as you know, was an amazing scholar. Again, I think he related a lot, the most, I think, of the hadith and all this, right? And even him, he regarded her as with a very high status, right? Um, and even though he's a man, she's a woman, still, it's no difference. If a woman has all this intelligence and all this knowledge, I mean, it doesn't mean the woman has need to always be in the house, or need to be very inferior to the men. Of course not. Okay. And of course, the lesson to be learned with Aisha on her answer to all this praise, right? It shows a modesty. It shows that she's not concerned with her status. Yes, I'm the wife of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but so what, right? And she's just concerned with meeting Allah, and she's very scared, yeah, of meeting Allah. Okay. Now, so for about 10 minutes, let us discuss about the various issues. So this is the life of Aisha anha. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course, granted the best place in Jannah al-Firdaus, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow you and I to meet her, right? But before we end, let us discuss about some of the issues that she faced, right? And that society today face with this whole issue of Aisha anha, right? So first of all, as I said, about the marriage of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, yeah, with Aisha anha at such a young age, right? As I explained just now, right? If this were to be a big issue, wouldn't Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam think about it before marrying such a young girl, right? The enemies of Islam were a lot in those days. The Quraysh, the Persians, the Romans, from different cultures, right? Different cultures. They never ever pointed out, look at this, right? How you marry such a young girl. Never. It never mentioned at all. It's today's world, right? That they try to bring down our Prophet ﷺ and of course our mother along with him, right? You have to remember in those early days, right? Nobody brought it up. So it was a culture in those days. It's quite a norm, yep, to marry young, right? Secondly, the girls reach puberty at a young age in a hot desert. So 9 years old, right? She would reach puberty. Yeah, it's not uncommon to consummate the marriage at 9, 10 years old. Okay, so this is something in which we need to really defend the truth, right, about the marriage of Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and Aishah anha, right? Um, there's nothing much for them to say, but with this, right? And for me, it's quite irritating that um, some people are trying to change the stories of the marriage. Oh, actually, she might marry. She was marrying Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in her teens. It is not. You need to stick to the script. We need to stick to the truth. It is as it is. So don't need to change the story in order to justify that Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, right, did the right thing, because she did as it was the norm in those days to marry Aishah anha, and the marriage was consummated at a young age, and that was the norm in those days. Okay. Secondly, let's talk about the great slender. Okay, what happened in the slender, right? In this slender, right? Aisha anha was with the troops, right? With the troops, and then she was traveling, and then she went to the toilet, and then she came back again. The troops saw her, and they thought that she would be going up, because she would always be traveling in this is a canopy and all this with, so it's closed on all the sides on the camel or horse, right? And then she thought, oh, I left a necklace somewhere, and she went out again, and then nobody realized that she wasn't, because she's so light, right? And then they left, right? And when she came back, she saw everybody gone. She was very tired and she fell asleep. And in those days, she was still wearing hijab. And when she fell asleep, her hijab was uncovered, right? One Sahaba, so in those days, people would usually go back to the place and see whether they have left anything behind. I mean, it's so organized. And subhanAllah, and he saw Aisha anha sleeping, and he said immediately, "Inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi raji'un." Right? He recognized her because when hijab, the veil, the verse of the veil was revealed. Right? He recognized her as the wife of Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Right? And so she went on the horse, and he was walking and went back to the city, right, in Medina. All right. Of course, the hypocrites were taking advantage of this. The chief hypocrite called Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Salul was first one who spread the rumor about things happening and all this, right? Because this is quite a huge thing, a huge trial, right? They call it Hadithul Ifk, right? The great slander, right? And Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, of course, it shows that he's just a human being. He wouldn't know the truth, and he couldn't defend her because the facts were on the face that she was on the horse, the Sahaba was walking, and all this, right? So there was a huge rumors and affair on this. He couldn't say anything, and he need to be fair, of course, right? So Aisha anha sought permission from him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to go back to the parents, right? And then it was a few days. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was quite cold to her. She felt, right? And then there was this few days in which they were waiting patiently. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was waiting patiently. Aisha anha was waiting patiently, and she knew. And this is what Allah, trusting in Allah, right? She knew that Allah will assist her, yeah, to resolve this slander. And the verses were revealed, right, in Surah 24 An-Nur for about, I think, how many verses? But maybe 20 verses, yeah, to release Aishah from all this slander, right? So this is an important test for everyone, right? As I said just now, it really shows that, well, if you are tested by Allah and if we are on the truth, brothers and sisters, we just need to be patient, right? There's no need to throw a tantrum. Oh, I'm the wife of the Prophet, I didn't do this and all this. I mean, she just keep quiet. There's nothing, because if you trust Allah, you know that Allah will always be with you. Isn't it true? Right? In many verses of the Quran, Allah was asking us to trust Allah, right? To put our trust in Him. In fact, when we leave the house, we also have this sunnah, right? To recite in the hadith, the dua, Bismillah tawakkaltu ala Allah wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. In the name of Allah, I put my trust in Allah, right? And wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa. There's no might and power except with Allah, right? So you just need to be calm, right? If you are on the truth, there's nothing to worry, isn't it true? Right? So a lot of lessons to be learned, including not trusting anybody, right, against your fellow believers. Right? And that means to defend your fellow believer. Actually, Allah was just scolding the believers in those days. Why don't you defend your mother and all this? Right? So this is important lesson, yeah, that it was revealed, and it shows a great honor for Aishah anha, that people like you and me are still reciting in Ramadan, right? In our prayer, right? In order to finish the Quran, right? We recited Subhanallah until the last day. The story of Aishah anha and the slander, the great slander. Now, the last story which I want to bring is where some communities, like the Shia community, is trying to put words in people's mouth and to put hatred on us, to our mother, right? That they said that, well, Aisha has so much weakness. She was the one who started the war of the camel and all this. It's completely not true, right? You have to remember, these people who pass the rumors are nothing compared to the Sahaba, right? They will be the one, and most of them, or if not all of them, are guaranteed Jannah. Isn't it true? Right? Because, for example, Ali anhu, right, and the Sahaba that died and all this, they were among those 10 people who were granted Jannah. Yeah? And Aishah and her, of course, she is the beloved wife of Muhammad, right? How do we allow this rumor to spread, and how dare some of these people say all the horrible things of our mother, right? So what happened in this incident, okay, in the Battle of the Camel, right? Aishah anha, right? She was in Mecca performing a Hajj, right? This was when Uthman, he was the caliph in those days, right? He was assassinated. It was a horrible assassination, and his supporters, may Allah be pleased with all of them, right? They had to bury his body in a hurry in the middle of the night, and the body was buried in, again, the Bakr grave in Medina. You can still see, alhamdulillah, where he was buried now. For the brothers, you can see it, right? He was buried there. So Aisha anha, he heard Ali anhu will be the next caliph, yeah, to take over, yeah, to succeed Uthman anhu. But however, right, she wanted to find out, and she wanted, because subhanallah, a great the caliph, the leader of the mu'minin, yeah, was murdered. Obviously, right, one of the main tasks that the successor need to do, it is to find out who did this, what happened, right? So she said that, well, we will support Ali if only this there is an inquiry going on, to find out who murdered this Uthman anhu, right? So so she had this group of Sahaba and the soldiers, right, in Mecca performing Hajj, and they one of the army, and she had an army, right? One of them was Talha anhu and Zubair anhu, and they were with her, right? And they just wanted to talk to Ali anhu in order to discuss this very amicably, right? So that, and there was no fighting at all. There wasn't intention to go to fight. There's no, I mean, subhanallah, there was a Sahaba, right? This was when the hypocrites take advantage, right? The hypocrites from both sides, from both Ali's side in Medina, and from there were some hypocrites along with Aishah, right? They started to attack each other, right? So on that basis, right, there was accusation. Aisha started all this. She was the one who did. Nobody started this except the hypocrites, right? And therefore, right, even subhanallah, may Allah reward them with the best of Jannah. Yeah, the Sahaba, Talha anhu and Zubair anhu, both of them died in this battle of the camel. Okay, and in the end, right, both Aisha and Ali, Aisha anha and Ali anhu, both of them, right, they made peace with each other, and nothing. There's no animosities, right? It was all peaceful, and of course, they are humans after all, brothers and sisters. They made mistakes in terms of how to deal with things on this, but in the end, right, everybody ended up amicably. It's just that some people, like the Shia in all this, are trying to make this issue, right, of our mother was the one who started all this, and there was always a lot of things criticized against her. I mean, Allah guide all these people, right? And we have to defend our mother, right? Aisha anha, subhanallah, right? And because she did so much for the Muslim ummah, and through her, she narrated a lot of hadith, right? Through her, we learn so many things. Through her, some of the revelations were revealed, as I said, about tayammum, about the slander, how to treat people who are slandering, right? How to deal with all this. So a lot of things we learn from our mother. Okay. So this is it. Just to clarify with you, in case you heard from people who were slandering Aisha today, right, yeah, our mother, we need to know, right? The battle was caused by the hypocrites, not by her, right? There was always this intention to resolve this amicably. But when things get out of hand, she cannot control it. Okay, but in the end, right at the end, right, they were still living happily together. There's no dispute, right? So we need to understand history correctly instead of trying to get different knowledge from all the Shia people, right? For sure, if you Google Aisha nowadays, the Shia people would bombard her with all these, with all these criticisms, and people will get confused. So do not be confused. It's a very straightforward matter. Aisha anha is still the mother of the believers, the beloved prophet, the beloved wife of Prophet Muhammad, right? And we make dua Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will continue, right, to make us, right, learn from the lessons, learn from the hadith that she has narrated, and we Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will allow you and me to meet our mothers in Jannah, right, in which we long to meet our mothers in Jannah. And we Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will continue to forgive whatever happens in those days, right? And of course, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to accept our deeds, forgive us for our own sins and our shortcomings, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant all of us Jannatul Firdaus, right? With that, I end this talk. Hopefully it is a valuable lesson, inshallah, for you and I. To learn about the mothers of the believers was Khadijah anha last week, and now it's Aisha anha today. And inshallah, we're going to talk about the Sahaba, inshallah, next week, the males, right? And then come back to others like Maryam and Fatima next time, inshallah. Right? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept of this in the month of Ramadan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to bless you and I, with goodness. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow all of us to emulate the goodness from all the lessons that we have learned so far, and grant all of us Jannatul Firdaus. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika asyhadu an la ilaha illa anta wa astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun alal mursalin walhamdulillahi alamin. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Jazakumullah khair. Inshallah, we'll see you tomorrow, for our next lesson, inshallah.